Hello there and welcome to World News Program. I'm your host, Greenfence Zachary, and up next are the top stories. In the last 24 hours, the Zionist occupation has committed 10 new massacres, killing at least 90. Among the victims, 10 were killed in a bombing while receiving aid, and 4 others died in a Zionist bombing targeting their house in Rafah. Also coming up, 400,000 Palestinians in northern Gaza face famine as UNRWA warns of worsening disaster, and the World Food Programme confirms emergency-level malnutrition. Also ahead, Shia government resigns over Gaza aggression. International Justice Committee resumes, and UN warns of humanitarian law collapse and criticizes Security Council's inaction on Gaza genocide. And the Zionist occupation bombs Baalbek, eastern Lebanon, marking the first attack since the onset of the aggression against Gaza amid concerns over a potential regional war. Stay tuned for details after the break. Hello again and welcome to the details. First off in our news, and in the Gaza Strip, in the last 24 hours, the Zionist occupation forces conducted 10 massacres, killing 90 people and leaving 164 injuries. The ongoing toll of violence since October 7th reached a staggering 29,782 martyrs and 70,782 injured. Thousands are still trapped under rubble or stranded on roads due to blockade imposed by the Zionist entity. On Sunday evening, at least 10 Palestinians were killed and others injured by Zionist occupation forces along the coastal road west of Gaza City. The occupation forces fired bullets and artillery shellings at tens of thousands of Palestinians awaiting aid trucks from the south of the Gaza Strip, leaving many casualties behind. 15 injured individuals were transferred to a Shifa hospital in Gaza City. Additionally, in Rafah, 4 Palestinians, including a woman and a child, were killed in a Zionist bombing targeting their house. 500,000 Palestinians in northern Gaza face famine, with 350,000 battling chronic diseases and 60,000 pregnant women at risk. In central Gaza, families struggle to feed children due to severe hunger as aid convoys remain blocked by the occupying entity. Zara Farjani reports.
From the north of the Gaza Strip to its center, a distressing famine grips Palestinians in its merciless hold. With food aid scarce and supplies dwindling, the people face a profound struggle exacerbated by the Zionist occupation's heartless blockade, thwarting relief convoys from reaching the devastated communities. In Jabalia, a school-turned-shelter now houses displaced Palestinians who find themselves engulfed by hunger amidst the dire scarcity.
Some people move south and some come here. There is no food or drink. They now give us junky fodder instead of flour. The children have nothing to eat. They are dying of hunger. There is no milk or anything to feed them. Even the mallow ran out. All the children are suffering from jaundice.
Desperation hangs heavy as hundreds scour for sustenance and crucial aid in the besieged enclave, their resilience tested to its very limits. For parents, the inability to provide even a morsel of bread to nourish their children is a gut-wrenching reality, leaving them to contemplate the unthinkable.
I wish death for their children because I cannot get them bread. I cannot feed them. I cannot feed my own children. Every day there is death. There is no rice, no food, no flour. What did we do to deserve this?
For 8-year-old Siraj Shahada and his 2 younger siblings, the struggle for survival is a cruel reality. Before seeking refuge with their aunt in a makeshift camp, they endured days of hunger, eating only once every 2 days in Gaza City.
We would eat bird and donkey food, just anything. We used to eat horse food, day after day, not this food. We were forbidden from having it. We used to eat forcibly.
My mother, brother and aunts were martyred. We're the only ones left, my father and my 2 brothers. Due to hunger and poverty, we secretly came to Deir al-Balah. We did not tell our father. After we came here, our grandmother called and started shouting at us.
Observers point to the Zionist regime's deliberate starvation tactics in Gaza as a chilling testament to their cruel agenda, despite facing unimaginable hardship never witnessed in human history. Palestinians stand resolute, their spirit unbroken by the unremitting bombardment nor forced displacement.
In relation to the same topic, UNRWA issued a stark warning of an imminent famine in the Gaza Strip. Filippo Lazzarini, the agency's Commissioner General, emphasized the necessity of real political will to avert this crisis, noting that UNRWA's appeals for food aid to northern Gaza have been rejected. Meanwhile, the World Food Programme highlighted that malnutrition has reached emergency levels, particularly among children. The program underscored a rapid escalation in the causes of acute malnutrition. And as you followed on the headlines on Monday, Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shtayyeh announced his government's resignation to President Mahmoud Abbas. Shtayyeh confirmed during a government session in Ramallah that the resignation was offered to Abbas last Tuesday and formally submitted in writing on Monday. Subsequently, President Abbas accepted the resignation and tasked Shtayyeh and his resigned ministers with overseeing government affairs temporarily until a new government is formed.
I would like to inform you, the Honorable Council, and our great people, that I placed the government's resignation at the disposal of Mr. President last Tuesday, February 20, 2024, and today I submit it in writing.
The Palestinian Prime Minister cited political, security and economic challenges stemming from the Gaza aggression and the West Bank escalation as reasons for his resignation.
This decision comes in the wake of the political, security and economic developments related to the aggression against our people in the Gaza Strip and the unprecedented escalation in the West Bank and Al-Quds and the fierce and unprecedented attack on our people, our Palestinian cause and our political system.
And on the same occasion, Shtayyeh also emphasized the importance of ongoing national unity discussions and the urgent need for inter-Palestinian consensus.
I see that the next stage and its challenges require new governmental and political arrangements that take into account the emerging reality in the Gaza Strip, the national unity talks, and the urgent need for an inter-Palestinian consensus based on a national basis, broad participation, unity, and the extension of the authorities' authority over the entire land of Palestine.
ومشاركة واسعة ووحدة الصف وإلى بسط سلطة السلطة على كامل أرض فلسطين.
The International Court of Justice has commenced deliberations on the United Nations General Assembly's request for legal consequences of Zionist occupation policies in Palestinian territories, including East Al-Quds. Despite temporary orders issued a month ago in the case of genocide, the occupation persists in committing severe crimes against Palestinians. Usama Ayadi has the story.
In The Hague, the International Court of Justice resumed its final public hearings on Monday, delving into the legal ramifications of the Zionist entity's policies and actions in the occupied Palestinian territory, notably East Al-Quds. These hearings unfold against a backdrop of relentless tragedy, with the stubborn policies of the Zionist regime claiming more lives and perpetrating further massacres in the besieged Gaza Strip. In a powerful statement during Monday's hearings, Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki condemned the dire situation in Gaza as a result of the Zionist entity's policies, labeling them as crimes of genocide, apartheid and ethnic cleansing.
Critical situation arising from Israel's policies, laws and actions, which are constituting crimes of genocide, apartheid and ethnic cleansing. These actions pose both existential and strategic threats to the Palestinian cause.
Representing the League of Arab States, lawyer Ralph Weld asserted the Zionist entity bears the legal duty to end the occupation of Gaza and the West Bank, emphasizing the imperative to respect the rights of the Palestinian people. However, the ongoing frenzied acts of occupation serve as a stark reminder that the entity shows no signs of relinquishing its grip, thereby perpetuating a conflict that destabilizes the entire region.
The Palestinian people have a legal right to the immediate end of the occupation, and Israel has a correlative legal duty to immediately terminate the occupation.
Deputy Turkish Foreign Minister Ahmed Yildiz echoed similar sentiments, emphasizing that the occupation and the lack of progress towards two-state solution stand as the real obstacle to achieving peace in the broader Middle East.
The conflict is not about a certain Palestinian faction or group. The conflict dates back to an earlier century. But the real obstacle to peace is obvious. The deepening occupation by Israel of the Palestinian territories, including East Jerusalem, and failure to implement the two-state vision.
After a request by the UN General Assembly, the 15 international judges in The Hague are expected to eventually provide a non-binding advisory opinion amid the decades-long occupation of the Palestinian land and the perpetration of daily war crimes.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres emphasized that no justification exists for the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. Speaking at the launch of the 55th session of the United Nations Human Rights Session in Geneva on Monday, Guterres warned of the collapse of international humanitarian law. He also stressed concern that a potential Zionist invasion of Rafah would further jeopardize aid programs. Guterres also criticized the lack of unity among UN Security Council members regarding the Gaza genocide.
Tens of thousands of civilians, including women and children, have been killed in Gaza. Humanitarian aid is still completely insufficient. Rafah is the core of the humanitarian aid operation, and UNRWA is the backbone of that effort. An all-out Israeli offensive on the city would not only be terrifying for more than 1 million Palestinian civilians sheltering there, it would put the final nail in the coffin of our aid programs. I repeat my call for a humanitarian ceasefire and the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. The Security Council is often deadlocked, unable to act on the most significant peace and security issues of our time. The Council's lack of unity on Russia's invasion of Ukraine and on Israel's military operations in Gaza, following the horrific terror attacks by Hamas on 7 October, has severely, perhaps fatally, undermined its authority. The Council needs serious reform to its composition and working methods.
At the same UN Human Rights Session in Geneva, Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki condemned the genocidal war on Gaza and urged the international community to pressure the entity and recognize Palestine, granting it full UN membership.
I urge the international community to respond strategically and decisively by taking positive, irreversible steps, including by recognizing the State of Palestine and granting it full membership to the UN, by imposing accountability on Israel, and by prompting states to fulfill their obligations and responsibilities.
The Palestinian presidency spokesperson Nabil Abu Rudaina has rejected the Zionist government's plan to displace civilians in Gaza. In a press statement on Monday, Abu Rudaina urged the American administration to take decisive action to halt Zionist aggression. He called on the U.S. to fulfill its responsibility by compelling the occupation to cease its attacks on Palestinians.
In response,
the plan that Netanyahu is talking about confirms to the entire world that he's continuing his aggression against Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip and confirms his prior decision to storm the city of Rafah, despite all international demands to stop this aggression and the crimes he's committing against Palestinian people. the continuation of the barbaric aggression against Palestinian people in their sanctities, the condemned displacement attempts in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, and the lack of a political horizon based on international legitimacy will destroy the entire region. The American administration must move differently and seriously to stop this Israeli madness and bear its responsibility by obliging the occupying state to stop this continuing aggression against our people and our land before it's too late, because the continued U.S. support is what encourages the occupation authorities to escalate their aggression and crimes against our people.
The U.S. Department of Defense, the Pentagon, confirmed the death of a U.S. Army pilot, Aaron Bushnell, aged 25, who tragically set himself on fire in front of the embassy of the Zionist entity in Washington. Bushnell's act of protest carried out on Sunday was in response to the genocide in Gaza, resulting in severe burns. According to American media, Bushnell, clad in a military uniform, poured a clear liquid on himself before igniting it, while chanting "Free Palestine" repeatedly.
Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Man's on fire! Man's on fire!
In another development, Zionist occupation aircraft conducted airstrikes near Baalbek in Lebanon's Bekaa region, marking the first such attack since the onset of ongoing Zionist aggression against southern Lebanese towns. Concurrently, Lebanese Hezbollah reported the downing of Zionist drone, the Hormuz 450, using a surface-to-air missile over the Iqlim at-Tufah area in southern Lebanon.
At 11 o'clock, or little after, at 11:20 a.m., we heard the sound of 4 planes. The sound was very loud. They were flying at very loud altitude. And after that, we heard the strikes that happened. Naturally, as people who live in the village, we went to see the damage. There was a strike here. Then 10 minutes, there was a strike in another place.
To a different story now. Namibia's new president, Nangulu Mbumba, has reiterated his nation's unwavering support for the Sahrawi people's right to freedom and independence. Mbumba views this commitment as a tribute to his predecessor, whose dedication to liberation and self-determination remained a top priority in international policy. He emphasized that Namibia's security is intertwined with the plight of Western Sahara. On Monday, Brazil reaffirmed its support for the United Nations efforts, including those of its special envoy, to resolve the conflict in Western Sahara and achieve a lasting political solution. This stance was expressed by the chargé d'affaires of the Brazilian embassy in Algeria, Albas da Costa, during Brazil's provision of humanitarian aid to Sahrawi refugee camps in Tindouf, southwestern Algeria.
We're proud to announce significant food donations to the refugees in Tindouf from Brazilian private actors. First, the Landless Workers Movement, MST, Movimento do Sem Terra, a mass social movement in Brazil, will donate 25,000 kilos of rice, 25 tons, as a sign of solidarity with the refugees. We thank them for their generosity. Second, the Brazilian Animal Protein Association will donate 4,000 kilos of frozen chicken. In addition to this donation, the Brazilian company Seara will donate 6,000 kilos of frozen chicken too. Seara is part of the Brazilian group GBS, the world's largest meat exporter. These donations together will sum 10,000 kilos of frozen chicken, 10,000 kilos of protein, 10 tons, and they are ready to go. We hope that this donation will arrive in the camps before the end of the Ramadan.
Regarding the humanitarian aid provided, it comes to save the lives of Sahrawi refugees. in a rational manner and cover their needs to accompany the permanent UN political solution to the conflict. For us, the efforts made by the Brazilian government regarding refugees in the camp are positive. There are traditional donors, such as the European Union, the United States, and countries like Spain and Germany. Here we must also mention historical donors like Cuba and other countries, as well as Algerian solidarity, both as a state and people, which has been historical for a long time.
And in related matter, Algerian Army General Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, Saïd Chengriha, reaffirmed Algeria's support for just causes like the Sahrawi and Palestinian ones. Despite geographical differences, Chengriha highlighted the shared suffering of these peoples and urged global efforts to confront occupation, warning of its threat to global security amidst international silence.
كانت الجزائر ولا تزال تدافع وتقف إلى جانب القضايا العادلة في العالم.
Algeria has been and continues to defend and stand by just causes in the world, such as the Sahrawi and Palestinian issues, because the occupation is not just oppressive practices against the occupied peoples, but rather a robbery of their existence, identity, capability, and the right of their citizens to life. What the two brotherly peoples of occupied Palestine and Western Sahara are exposed to highlights the ugliest forms of abuse against civilians, especially children, women, and the elderly, without taking into account the simplest international human rights and humanitarian law.
Still with Algeria-related news, one day after the inauguration of Algiers' Jama' al-Jazair Mosque, the city witnessed the official opening ceremony of the world's third largest mosque. The opening coincides with the upcoming Muslim fasting month of Ramadan, traditionally a time when worshippers gather in mosques for prayers.
We are pleased to welcome the guests of Algeria, and we're happy that they share with the Algerian people the gigantic opening of the Algiers Mosque, which was inaugurated by Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, the President of the Republic, in the midst of the month of Sha'ban, and in coincidence with the memory of our martyrs. And the President has worked for 10 years in supervising the achievement and providing assistance and facilitation of all what necessitates its construction and serving its messages for it to be the historical, aesthetic and national image for its architecture, which reminds of the Andalusian civilization.
And in other news, protesting farmers clashed with police officers in Brussels on Monday, coinciding with a meeting of European Union agricultural ministers. The farmers attempted to breach police barricades outside the main EU offices. Here's Selva Nasib.
Just steps away from the European Union building in Brussels, where EU agricultural ministers are holding their meeting to discuss ongoing farmers' protests sweeping across the bloc. Demonstrators gather to put more pressure on EU governments for inability to offer viable solutions to alleviate these sectors' woes.
We are here again in Brussels today as farmers because the European Union is not listening to our demands. Our demands is for fair revenue. We don't make a living out of our work. We produce the food and we don't make a living. Why is so? Because of free trade agreements, because of deregulation, because the prices are below cost of production. So we demand the EU to move on this, stop free trade agreements and put in place minimum support prices that cover our cost of production and allow us to have a decent income.
In response to farmers' discontent, ministers are considering new EU proposals, such as reducing farm inspections and potentially easing environmental standards for small farms. Belgian Deputy Prime Minister David Clarenval points to pressures from the Green Deal and geopolitical tensions with Russia as underlying issues.
Farmers have to be paid for what they do, and including for what is not included in the common agricultural policy. And so, there are aspects of the Green Deal which are demanded of farmers which are not remunerated. And so, this is the core of the problem. But there are also aspects of the market which are important, and we see that the grains market is collapsing. The prices are going down, and so, this is a dirty game which Russia is putting in place to put pressure on Ukraine, but also on the single market. We're in the global geopolitical context, and we have to keep all these aspects in mind.
Meanwhile, farmers continue to protest, this time in Madrid, driving their tractors to the European Parliament office to demand action. They cite challenges ranging from cheap supermarket prices to intense competition from imports and stringent EU environmental regulations as pressing concerns.
More stories making headlines around the globe in the news in brief.
On Monday, the Jordanian army executed its largest airdrop operation yet, delivering vital aid to Gaza. Food and medical supplies were parachuted to 11 sites along the Gaza coast, reaching millions of Gazans, especially those in camps.
Attacks by Yemen's Houthis in the Red Sea have caused significant disruption for UK exporters. A survey by the British Chamber of Commerce reveals that 55% of exporters experience shipping disruptions, affecting 53% of manufacturers and business-to-consumer service firms, including retailers.
The Hungarian parliament greenlit Sweden's NATO membership bid, making way for the Nordic country to join as the 32nd member, with 188 lawmakers in favor, 6 against and no abstentions. The decision concludes months of delays. This move follows a recent visit by the Swedish Prime Minister to Hungary, where arms deal between the two nations was also sealed.
An attack on a mosque in eastern Burkina Faso resulted in the killing of dozens of Muslims on the same day as another deadly attack on Catholics attending Mass. A Burkinabe local source said the terrorist group entered the town early morning and surrounded the mosque, where people gathered for the first prayer.
Libya and Sudan have agreed to exchange delegations and activate signed agreements between the two nations. This decision follows the launch of a conference supporting a comprehensive process of a national reconciliation and transitional justice, chaired by the Libyan Presidential Council Deputy, Abdullah Halafi.
Liverpool won the League Cup by beating Chelsea 1-0 through a late extra-time goal from captain Virgil van Dijk. After a fierce end-to-end battle at Wembley on Sunday, this marks the third cup victory for Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool over Chelsea in 2 years.
Well, we reached the end of our news. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, take care.